Hey everybody, we're here with Bao Nguyen, who is the director of Be Water and a Firelight Doc Lab alum. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bao.
Thanks so much for having me, Sian-Pierre.
So just last year, you screened at Sundance. What's the life of your film been like in that 1 year and such a weird year?
Yeah, it was when I was at Sundance last year. I don't think, well, anyone expected how crazy 2020 would be. And now looking back on it, we're so grateful that we had our Sundance premiere. The next festival that I was planning to go to after Sundance was South by, and we were again really excited about that since that's such a different sort of festival. But the reality hit in March 2020, and I got stranded in LA. I wasn't planning to live in LA. I was living in London at the time. And yeah, I was just sort of thinking I was going to hang back in Los Angeles for a couple months until things sort of like calmed down. But a couple months has come to January 2021, and I decided to move to LA. But I was lucky enough for, you know, ESPN, who broadcast the film, who financed the film, they were very supportive of trying to get it to the largest audience possible. And we ended up moving our broadcast premiere to June, even though it was supposed to premiere around November 2020 to coincide with Bruce Lee's 80th birthday. But at the same time, I think it was a blessing in disguise because so many people, unfortunately, were at home, so they had not much to do, so they ended up watching my film, and I was really grateful again for the support of, not just the audience members, but a lot of filmmakers, especially Firelight, who were really helping to amplify the film and getting it to an audience that in the end really appreciated it.
Yeah, and it's a really powerful film. And if anybody hasn't watched it, I know that there's a big for your consideration campaign happening now. So it is screening on the Oscars site. So I encourage all of you guys to check out Be Water. I consider you actually a pretty stylish dude from all I can see on your Instagram. What would you have worn to Sundance this year if you had the chance to be back there?
Well, last year was my first Sundance ever, and so I read all the, what you need to bring to Sundance, how cold it is, and I brought like 8 layers of clothes, and I just bundled up because I figured I'd be standing out in the cold all the time. This year, I mean, I'm sort of glad that it's virtual for some reasons. Of course, obviously, it would be better if it was in person, but I think the idea of being in a, not stuck in outdoors when it's snowing, freezing. Is sort of advantage from last year. But I guess I still have the same, since I was stranded in America, I still have my winter clothes from Sundance last year that sort of was in the closet for most of 2020. But maybe I'll just sort of bundle up and watch a few films this year in the same sort of Sundance mode.
Totally, bring that feeling back. So you're part of the Firelight Doc Lab community. What's been the most powerful sort of thing that the community has given back to you?
I think just the sense of community in the first place is something that's been really empowering and also inspirational for me as a filmmaker. I remember the last retreat I think I went to was the Chicago retreat, which was in 2015, and I was just starting to think of the idea of Be Water. And I remember talking to my fellow Firelight Doc Lab members and getting really inspired by the ways that they wanted to tell stories and just being unapologetically themselves and authentic to our identities and who we are. And I think if people have had a chance to see Water, that sort of ethos comes through in the way I wanted to make it, which is looking at someone part of American history through a lens that felt very honest and personal and representational.
Yeah.
But I mean, beyond just, Be Water, I think showing filmmakers of color, underrepresented filmmakers, that there's value in our stories and value in us telling our stories. It's been, I couldn't describe. I'm sort of speechless thinking about how helpful it's been to me as a filmmaker.
Mhm. Well, the category tonight is resilience, because I feel like we've all had to be resilient over the last year, particularly people who have been putting out films and had this whole plan that in some ways was thwarted. What in 2021, if there's one word for a category that you want to hold yourself to, a theme, a mission, a goal, what would that be?
Ooh, okay. Let me think about this. One word's always, those questions are always tough when you're thinking of one word. But I mean, I go back to the idea of community and and kindness. Really, I think those kind of go hand in hand of how we move forward as not just the filmmaking community, but as sort of a world community, and how we can be generous to each other in our various communities.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you joining with us tonight. Again, if you haven't seen Be Water, please do. Super powerful film from a great filmmaker. Thanks so much for joining us, Val.
Thanks for having me.